Well, the buzzword over the last 3 odd months, as India continues to import large amounts of um, petrol or fuel and other commodities which we don't have a choice about, is the kind of advance that the country's made on electronic exports. Now, whether it's aided by PLI schemes or otherwise, I think we've seen a serious move there. Electronic exports, in fact, picked up since 2019, before the production-linked incentives, and now the PLI benefits are kicking in. So we thought it best, and I think from what we read in the headlines today, the mobile phones and that category is probably one of the principal export items as well. So we thought it best to get in some, not a Dixon specific conversation necessarily, but more an industry specific conversation from arguably one of the industry leaders, which is Dixon Technologies, Saurabh Gupta. We speak to him during the results a number of times. It's good to get him on a non-result conversation as well. Saurabh, good having you. Thanks for joining in. And the whole idea, Saurabh, was to just try and put some method to the madness, some numbers to the whole cloud that people are building in. Hope that is okay.
Yeah, that's okay, Neeraj. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
The pleasure is ours. So, Saurabh, tell us, I mean, mobile and component manufacturing is apparently going to be the largest beneficiary of incentives paid in FY23. This shouldn't obviously come as a surprise. Do you think from where we are right now, these numbers will only swell?
Yeah, clearly, so mobile is the largest opportunity that India is sitting upon. Clearly, as you look at the global brands are clearly looking to de-risk from China and shift a part of the portion of manufacturing to India. And India, of course, has its advantages in terms of a massive labor pool, low labor cost. So clearly, India will be a bigger beneficiary. And the shift in mobiles will be very fast. So from a net importer of mobiles in 2014, India has now started exporting mobiles. And in fact, the mobile numbers, if you look at year on year, they're growing very strong. From last year, 6 billion worth of mobiles got exported. This year, we're talking about a 9 billion number. And in next 5 years, we're talking about a number of almost 160 billion. So that's almost 50% of the total electronic exports that the government expects. So clearly, mobile is the largest opportunity for India. And already we have seen the supply chain shifting from China to India. So that's a big positive. And I think so the similar thing would happen in electronic components as well, because as the scale comes into the system, I think so the component ecosystem also evolves. We have seen that happening in other industries, and I think so similar thing would happen in electronic sector as well.
So, sort of one, why could this be happening? I mean, a lot of people know this is happening. China plus one is touted as the most common reason. I'm sure there is more to this. So one, why could this be happening? And two, do you reckon those numbers that you spoke about right now, are they kind of peak numbers that we're talking of, or would that also be something that India will better upon over the course of the decade? I mean, you spoke about 60 billion in 5 years. Just trying to understand, how are you guys thinking about it over the course of the decade?
So shift is happening really fast, Neeraj. I think so India can definitely surpass those numbers. But of course, yeah, so a lot of good work is going on. So one reason is, of course, this whole international companies looking to de-risk from China, having a presence beyond China, and India is, of course, one of the favorite destinations. Second, this whole geopolitical tension between China and some of the other Western countries. So that's triggering that movement. Third, I would say the big strong policy framework of the government, whether it is in form of duty arbitrage or the production link incentive schemes of the government, and other stronger policies of the government, both at the center and the state level, to encourage domestic manufacturing and more so the electronic manufacturing. Fourth, I would say India, of course, has an advantage of the labor cost. So India's labor cost is now almost 6 to 7 times lower as compared to China, lower as compared to the other countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand. So that's a big positive for India. And of course, fifth, I would say India is a very big market. So for any brand to grow, I think so India is a very big market, and we clearly see that at least the domestic part of manufacturing, domestic consumption, will be completely met through the domestic manufacturing route. And in the times to come, of course, as is happening in mobiles, we see that will happen in other sectors as well. That India will emerge as a manufacturing hub for other electronic products.
Interesting. Saurabh, when you guys think of these opportunities, how do you think of it? I mean, this 60 billion number that you spoke about, is that kind of peak numbers? Because I'm sure if India is doing all that it can, Vietnam, which was already a leader and was maybe 10 times India's exports back in 2019, would also be doing stuff like that to enhance its wallet share.
Clearly, every country is doing that. But clearly, as I said, Neeraj, there are a couple of advantages that India enjoys. One, a very big Indian market, so a strong consumption market, I would say. And secondly, all these other countries which you just mentioned, I think so also have a limitation in terms of the labor pool availability. So my sense is the labor cost will continuously go up. India, you still have a labor cost will always be lower as compared to this some other countries. So these are the two positives which India has. And clearly, third is the strong policy framework, which of course other countries are also following. And if you look at the tax rate has also been now reduced to 17% for domestic for manufacturing companies. So I think so. So all these combinations put together, I think so. India will score better, and there'll be a lot of shift of manufacturing to India.
And sort of by the time 5 years are over, I'm not talking about Dixon in particular, but by the time the 5-year incentives of PLIs are over and you've expanded, you've set up capacities, etc., etc. But once the incentives go away, you reckon economies of scale would help firms compete on the global side? Because the incentives will definitely go away.
Yeah, so Neeraj, basically government is giving you a window for 5 years. They're hand holding you for 5 years. They want you to grow in scale and size, reduce your manufacturing costs, improve productivity, get the best talent on board, get invest in best systems, work with as many customers as possible, so that once this PLI invest in backward integration, deepen the level of manufacturing, get into designing wherever possible to more design-led manufacturing. So my sense is once this 5 years of PLI period is gone, I think the companies like us, Dixon and some of the other companies, I think so. It's upon us to actually to make sure that once this PLI period ends, we are right up there to compete with our counterparts in other countries, and we compete and we become globally competitive, both at the skill set side, scale side, as well as on the cost side. So that's what it is there. I think so. Every country in the stage of every industry in the stage of infancy requires some kind of a support, which the government is doing. Now it's up to companies like us to actually deliver on that. So I think so. That's there.
Got it. Now, sort of what's been the surprise category in 2022, if you will, because you would have expected some categories to do well, but maybe there was a surprise. And what is the category of gadget or electronics to look out for in the year 2023?
So clearly, Neeraj, in our case, mobile is the largest opportunity. So as the case is with India also. So clearly, we have some large customers on board. We are in advanced discussions to get some other large customers on board. Clearly, my sense is apart from mobiles, wearables is a very good opportunity. So we have a tie-up with one of the largest brands in India called Boat. We are clearly increasing our volumes with them. We are adding more SKUs with them. So that's a very industry which is growing at 70-80% plus. And within that industry, within that vertical, smartwatches are growing at 170% plus. So that's a huge potential. Telecom looks very interesting as a category because clearly there is a big case for substitution of imports in telecom vertical for the telecom and networking products, and we see that over a period of time those products can be exported out of India. So yeah, these three verticals: mobiles, wearables, and telecom, I would say, would be the growth opportunities. Apart from that, yeah, the TV and the refrigerator verticals would also be looks very promising. And on the lighting side, I think so. We should have some large export orders by next financial year.
By next financial year, that is FY24. Okay. Sort of my final question. Economies of scale usually help in improving operational metrics. I know the last 2-3 years have been marred a lot by the input cost availability as well as cost. So leave the extraordinaries aside. But in your business, margins are not necessarily in the double digits. So even a 50 basis points uptick or a downtick is a major one. I would love to understand from you over the course of the next 2-3 years or 5 years, let's say, once the economies of scale come fully in, you reckon operational metrics can really shoot up from where they are right now? Or would this industry be such that margins more or less remain at the levels where you would be right now?
So Neeraj, you are absolutely right. One, we think that the absolute growth in revenues and profitability will be very strong. There's a huge opportunity, immense opportunity that we are sitting on. So in absolute numbers, the growth in revenues and EBITDA will be very strong. Now, if I have to put those numbers in margins, my sense is we are at sub 4%. But as operating leverage, as you mentioned, will keep kicking in across other verticals where we have just started in the last 2 years, my sense is that that is one lever for margin expansion. Second, in every vertical, we have a plan to migrate more and more to our own design solutions, where we are able to generate that extra margins. And third is more deepening of manufacturing. So I think so. All this is put together, we feel confident that our margins should move by in the next couple of years should move from sub 4% to somewhere around 4.4, 4.5%. So every year there should be a 20-25 base margin expansion. But more than that, Neeraj, we are clearly looking at a significant ROC expansion for us. So from a sub 30% levels, we see that the verticals that we've got into have higher asset turns, have lower working capital intensity. So clearly, those ROC profile in a 2 years down the line should look like somewhere around 40% plus. So that is something we more monitor rather than the margins, because we look at what would be our growth in our ROC metrics.
Well, we wish you all the best for that and more. Saurabh, thanks so much for throwing some light on this very interesting topic. Lovely talking to you today.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thank you.
Thank you. Viewers, thanks for tuning in.